I'm sure that you are aware of the events over the last year with us making attempts to pass the anti-money laundering bill in the Parliament. I will not go through the whole year's events, but to come immediately to some of the more current events that have been taking place. As you know, the Parliamentary Special Select Committee that has been looking into this matter had extensive discussions on it, and they reached a stage where they invited the assessor from CFATF to address them and to avail himself to answer questions from the members of the Special Select Committee. The assessor came, he explained that the bill that is presently before the Parliament is CFATF compliant. And if that bill is passed, then Guyana will not face all the consequences of being blacklisted. He explained too, specifically, that some of the amendments put forward by the opposition has the jeopardy or the danger of making what is already CFATF compliant, that is the Act of 2009, of making it non-compliant. And the jeopardy could be that if you pass the bill with the amendments that are there, that we could still be blacklisted because it could stand the danger of not meeting the requirements of CFATF. Now, you know that the opposition they were publicly making some demands on the government and some conditions that they have been putting on the government to pass those bills. I have publicly referred to them as a blackmail type of politics. The AFC wanted to have the Public Procurement Commission established. And then because they had said they had no problems with the bill. And if the Public Procurement Commission is established, they would support the bill. Now they have changed their position. They have now adopted all of APNU's position, including the amendments of the APNU. The APNU, on the other hand, has been asking for me to sign the bills that I had not assented to before. And I explained that to the media before, that I did not assent to those bills because I have been advised that they were unconstitutional. And that was where that stood. Over the last days, and particularly even before Mr. Hernandez, Roger Hernandez, the assessor for CFATF, arrived here, I had received a letter from the leader of the opposition suggesting that we set up a committee to look at those bills that I have not assented to, and on the grounds for us to pass the anti-money laundering bill. I responded to him positively by saying that that I want these bills without the amendments to go to the National Assembly, and I'm ready to set up the committee to look at the issues, at the problems, to listen, to hear, to try to work towards a solution with the other bills that he spoke about. I also told him, and I told the opposition parties this morning, again, that we have a bill that we know and we were told that it is in compliance with the standards of the CFATF and FATF. I said to them, let us pass this bill so that we can put our country beyond problems and the jeopardy that exists and the consequences that can come from being blacklisted. I reiterated my readiness to establish the joint committee to look at the bills that I have not assented to. With the AFC, I told them I'm ready to work towards establishing the Public Procurement Commission, but the government's no objections must be preserved. And the discussions today, they wanted me to give them all of the assurances that they want, but the APNU has refused to mention to me what concessions they were ready to make on the amendments that they have. I went further to say, and I even put this in writing to the leader of the opposition, since we know that we have a bill that is CFATF compliant, let us pass that bill and let us send the amendments that they have to the CFATF to seek their opinions if these bills would be in compliance with the standards of CFATF. And I said to him, if they are not in compliance, then the opposition should give up the amendments. If they are in compliance, then they have the majority in Parliament. They can move back the motions to the House. They can amend the bill, and I am giving my public commitment that I will assent to the bill. So that is where our positions are. I think that that is, they have refused, and they have refused to say how they are ready to modify their amendments to make it CFATF compliant. Want me to give everything that they want, and then they said that they will discuss their issues in the Special Select Committee. So that's where the meeting went this morning. I have two of my colleagues who were with me this morning at the meeting, and they too have been involved with this matter in the Special Select Committee for a while. I will ask any one of them if they want to add anything before I open the floor to your questions. Do you want to add anything?
Just to simply indicate to the media and by extension to the public, there is absolutely no quarrel between government, the APNU, and the AFC as it relates to the pre-February 2012 recommendations of the CFATF. When the assessor came to Guyana, he indicated that there are a new set of recommendations that would have already come to Guyana post-February 2012, which will have to form the basis of another bill that is coming to the National Assembly sometime in the future. These recommendations that the APNU is making, we have put that to them, could form part of that new set of amendments that will come in a subsequent bill. They have refused that. We have repeatedly said that the terms of reference that was given to the Parliamentary Special Select Committee is to deal with the Bill number 22 of 2013. As of the 9th of February, all the parties in the Select Committee has agreed on that bill. Guyana should not face the horror of blacklisting because at the level of the committee, as of February 9th, we have an agreed bill that satisfies all of the requirements based upon the pre-February 2012 recommendations by CFATF. To push the government into a position of accepting recommendations from the Principal Act, which Mr. Hernandez, when he was here, indicated that even though it is outside of his remit, because he had seen, because it was sent by the Special Select Committee, the recommendations of the APNU, he made it very clear, and I think it's on now record, that we face the peril of being non-compliant. Because pre-February 2012, the entire 2009 Act was reviewed. Only those parts that were considered to be deficient recommendations were made. And all of the recommendations in Bill number 22 of 2013 satisfies those deficiencies that existed pre-February 2012. To go now to the 2009 Act and to tinker with it when you don't have the time to deal with compliance is putting Guyana at risk. So there is no way that the APNU could convince the people of Guyana that good faith exists in getting a bill to the Parliament that will bring us into compliance and prevent us from being blacklisted. What they're seeking to do by saying they're strengthening the bill is putting the country at peril, at risk of having a bill that is non-compliant. The issues that they're seeking to address are issues that require national consultations. And we have said that to them because the CFATF did not ask for these matters to be addressed. As a political party, they're saying they reserve the right to make recommendations, which we agree. But these recommendations or amendments are of such a serious consequence that it will affect what are the cardinal principles of the operation of financial intelligence units: autonomy and confidentiality. And the CFATF assessor, in his meeting with the Special Select Committee, has said, nowhere in any part of the world he has seen an FIU that is appointed by the Parliament. Nowhere in the world. It does not exist because the guidelines by which the FIU has to operate must be based upon the cardinal principles of autonomy and confidentiality. There must be security of tenure. The director must not be able to be removed because he does something that offends anyone, whether it's in the government or in the legislature. There must be a process, and that is what we presently have. If we want to strengthen that, we have said to them there is room for discussion. However, what is evident today in today's meeting, and I need to say that, is that all those who are in the room are aware that if we don't have a bill by February 28th, we will be blacklisted. So that is a clear case that the APNU has finally agreed that there is a deadline, because all the time they were saying there was no deadline. At least that's one thing now we are assured. They have now admitted that there is a deadline. What we have, however, is the putting of pressure for all these extraneous concessions when these are matters that require debate and discussion. So I would want to put that out there in the open.
I just want to reiterate that the government has gone through a series of processes and engagements, all designed to exhaust every possibility available to ensure that this bill is passed. The opposition seems to be operating on the premise that this bill is the government's bill, and therefore if this bill is not passed, the government will lose something. So they're using this bill to extract all manner of things from the government. This bill has to be passed because it is important to Guyana. And one would expect that every national party, every national leader in this country will see the importance of this bill. That concept of national importance of this bill is lost on the opposition. You heard from the inception the Alliance for Change repeatedly say that they care less what is contained in the bill. In fact, I don't think Mr. Ramotar has even ever read the bill. He has been saying from the beginning he doesn't care what is contained in the bill. All he wants is the Procurement Commission established. I don't think any human being in Guyana ought to be in doubt. For the last 10 months, that has been Mr. Ramotar's and the AFC's position. They want a Procurement Commission, and they pass the bill right away. This morning, tomorrow, we are planning to go to the Parliament to pass the bill. We have said to the AFC, well, we are prepared to give you the Procurement Commission for tomorrow morning. We are prepared to do everything that can be done between today and tomorrow, all things being equal, so that you can have the Procurement Commission as far as possible, that which can be accomplished by tomorrow morning for the tomorrow sitting of the Parliament, to get your support. What is the AFC's response? No, that is no longer our position. Our position now is you have to now pass the amendments that APNU wants, and you must now satisfy the APNU. So after 10 months of repeated to this nation that all they want from the government for this bill to be passed is the establishment of the Procurement Commission, when time now to deliver, they have changed. The APNU, they have said that they wanted, their position has changed consistently. The bottom line that they want now is that they want all their amendments passed, irrespective that it will make the country non-compliant, irrespective of the fact that it will change the whole architecture of the FIU and the Principal Act. They don't care. They just simply want that to be passed. They have even taken the ridiculous position of denying what Hernandez has said. And you would have Hernandez on tape. We have verbatim recording of what Hernandez said in the committee. They are denying what Hernandez said to us. So that is a state of ridicule to which we have descended. Then their other position now, the president by the time now to tomorrow must reverse all his positions in relation to the bills that he has withheld assent from. So it's no longer now the amendments alone, because that was one of their positions. Now it is to relook at all the bills and give assent to them, irrespective of how wrong they are, irrespective of how unconstitutional they are, irrespective of the danger that the presidency will be exposed to in terms of condoning unconstitutionality. All of that we must turn a blind eye to and assent to, and therefore that is their position. Two sets of positions that are incapable of finding acceptance with any reasonable grouping of people. And that is the position where we are at. We are at a position where the bill, most likely than not, will not be passed because of the unreasonable demands of the opposition, which has changed over and over again until this morning. And that's where the position we are at.
Just to add one small point before I open the floor to your questions. And I even saw in the papers this morning and in the Stabrook News this morning, words attributed to Rupert Rupnarain, in which they're saying that we are creating a hysteria about the date, the drop dead date. And they're pointing out that several times we said that they would be drop-dead dates, and they have not been drop-dead dates. This is a clear case where our success in fighting to defend and protect Guyana is being turned against us in some ways. Our efforts at diplomacy and our appeal, because we have a unique situation, all the countries that have ever been blacklisted had been as a result of the reluctance or the refusal of governments to pass these pieces of legislation. In this case, the government is ready to pass the bill that is CFATF compliant. And the issue that we're having is the opposition is who's preventing the passage so far of this bill. So we have found some appeal to the CFATF to help us to argue our case. Don't blacklist us, give us some time. And this has been constantly being used against us to say that we are creating hysteria. I just want to say, ladies and gentlemen of the press, all we have been doing is doing our best to protect Guyana from being blacklisted. And when we succeed in getting a little bit more concession, we are being told that we are creating hysteria in the media. And the last point, I saw today, I don't know if it's a misrepresentation or a misreported, I saw on the iNews today that it is said that Mr. Greenwich said that the meeting broke up because I refused to answer any question about President Jagdeo's health. Just let me say to you that that question never arose. I just want to make those points, okay?
Given the opposition party's stance on the additional amendments, could you say at what stage is the CPC in drafting those amendments? Should we miss the deadline and be blacklisted? What measures are there to counter, or what measures would there be in place to address us being blacklisted? And the opposition have long been saying that the existing act, while it was also weak, it was not being enforced. How would you respond to this?
The bill that is before the Parliament now is to correct whatever deficiencies the Act had as far as enforcement is concerned. The question of seizure of property and those other things. This is what this bill is about, so that you can give legal effect to taking some of the stands, the measures that has to be taken in case you find someone guilty. And I would like to make this point, which I made today at the meeting as well, that we have to be, when we talk about, we have to be comparative. Right? We are part of the region. The region has the same legislation. One of the things that the opposition have been saying is that we have not made any charges. Well, then maybe the whole region then is probably deficient as far as implementation is concerned, because I don't know. There might be, but at this point in time, if there is, it's very few. But I don't know of any country where they have had these successful prosecutions that they're talking about. Go on.
In addition to that, the CFATF process is a continuous one whereby they assess countries over different intervals. The next wave, the last wave of assessments, came as a result of failure in terms of prosecution and failure in terms of institution of charges. Each country was subjected to an analysis, And Guyana, for example, there were technical deficiencies identified with the statutory regime. Those technical deficiencies, the faults that were identified became the subject of recommendations. It is those recommendations that have been reduced into legislative formulations and are part of the bill that is before the Parliament. Hernandez was very clear in his explanation also that the next wave of assessment will focus on enforcement, because CFATF, having recognized that enforcement is a problem regionally, examined every country to deal with strengthening the apparatus in order to increase capacity to deliver in terms of enforcement. The next wave of assessment will deal with enforcement. Right? Hernandez made that very clear. The other question that you ask relates to where the bill is having regard to the amendments. The fact of the matter is, Mr. CPC, Mr. Durjan, and Mr. Famafat have been dealing with the CFATF for a number of years now. They are well acquainted with the manuals, they are well acquainted with the models, and they are well acquainted with the principles that govern FIU and legislation of this type. They have been unable to put into writing what has been presented to them because, in accordance with their understanding and training, it is offensive to the regime promulgated by CFATF regionally. And that is where we are at. They wrote the committee chairman, and that letter was transmitted to the opposition from where the amendments have come, to indicate where they need more instructions, where it is that they need guidance, because if they translate this proposal into the bill, then you have ramifications with recommendations. You are changing the model of the FIU. If you change the model of the FIU, then you are interfering with and you are liable to be in contravention of foundational principles of the FIU, for example, autonomy, for example, independence, conflict of interest, insulation from a political process. If you make it appointable by 65 members of a parliament who are politicians, then you are making the FIU a product of a political process. That is in violation of the FATF regulations and guidelines and CFATF regulations and guidelines. Because of, and I've only given you some, I can go on to speak about the rest. Because of those fundamental conceptual difficulties with the instructions given to the draftsperson, he has been unable to convert that into a legislative formulation. And that is where we are at.
Yeah, okay.
Good afternoon, here and
What?
The other question, measures in place should really be blacklisted, because from our indication, the bill will not come forward tomorrow.
That's anybody's guess.
The opposition has a majority in the select committee, so the select committee has to return back the bill to Parliament.
No, you're asking about measures being put in place to minimize the effects of the
Should
backlash.
we be blacklisted?
I don't know what we can do, because a lot of these actions are going to be taken outside of our jurisdiction. That is why it is an international bill, because the whole idea, the thinking behind this bill is that they wanted to have, as far as that is possible, all the countries of the region will have the same kind of legislation. And in the whole world, where people who belong to the FATF organization, as far as possible, we have a similar type of legislation, so that we do not have any loopholes that money launderers or terrorists can use one country against another. So that is why there is an international sanction against a country when they do not pass that legislation, because that, in their opinion, they feel that that country is opening itself to be manipulated by drug traffickers, by money launderers, by whoever else in doing illegal activities. So the consequences, we will continue to battle for Guyana. We will continue to argue our case. We do that knowing that when we succeed, or if we succeed, that we will be also lampooned at home for creating hysteria. But this is the reality. The CFATF man was here. He spoke to you. He spoke to the private sector. So I'm not giving you information that is secondhand. That is my interpretation. You have heard yourselves what he said about the dates. We will continue to fight as much as possible because the government has no problems in passing the bill as it stands, which is CFATF compliant. I think we need not reach your stage. I think what is needed is patriotism, and my position that I have put, I think is eminently reasonable. Let us pass what we know CFATF has deemed to be compliant, and let us argue what is not sure or what they have even said stand the danger of making what we have non-compliant, and let us have their opinion, not my opinion, and on these matters before we go forward. I think that would be what is needed now, is patriotism and putting the welfare of our people first. That is what I think is needed at this point. That we will not, the question will not arise if we can have an ounce of that in our midst at this point in time.
Kieran
Yes.
Gani, good afternoon, Kaitro News. The AG would have mentioned earlier that for the past 10 months, AFC has been requesting, well, trying to trade the AML passage for the Public Procurement Commission. Now, if government is so conscious of how important this bill is, why is it the Public Procurement Commission was not established to allow this passage some 10 months ago? And how is government prepared to give the Public Procurement Commission as of tomorrow, when Presidential Advisor Gail Tejera said it would have taken some time to put this in place?
First of all, let me just correct you, because probably the Public Procurement Commission has been around for such a long time that maybe you were even too young and you were probably not yet a journalist when this came about. This issue came about at the 8th Parliament. The Public Procurement Commission was passed. Cabinet sent this to the Parliament to be passed, and the modification was made on the floor. Ill-advised modification. However, we were still ready to try to proceed with some of these issues. And I was one of the lead negotiators with the PNC Lance Scarberry in the first instance, and in the second instance, I don't like to talk about people who can't answer for themselves. But my other person was Mr. Winston Murray, but we will not talk about Winston Murray now. Lance Scarberry and I, our negotiation broke down because he was making every effort to take over the majority of the commission. As a result of that, the Public Accounts Committee never set it up, because very clearly to get the 2/3 majority to pass it in the National Assembly was extremely unlikely. But we have committed ourselves to still want these bills to pass. But our position is that the government needs to have its no objections preserved. At the moment, the government of Guyana, the cabinet of the government of Guyana, does not award contracts. We are the only country in the Caribbean where our cabinet does not award contracts. We are probably one of the few, if not probably the only country in the Commonwealth that our cabinet does not award contracts. But we feel that if we are going to be held responsible, if we are going to be charged every day about corruption and all of that, it's like Chalkner said, if I can take the blame or fame, doctor, clear your name. This is what it comes down to. If we are the executive, this is an executive function, and if the executive is to be held responsible, this is the minimum that we can have, and that is our right to no objections. So that is why it has been failing all the time, because of the question of the issue of the no objection that is extremely important as the executive, for the executive to discharge its functions. Am I clear? Will I have a clear reportage in the paper tomorrow?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, okay.
In addition to that, though, Ms. Kiran, we also, in demonstrating our commitment to the establishment of the Procurement Commission, we have tabled a bill in Parliament a few months ago which seeks to restore the no objection of Cabinet, because when the Procurement Commission is established, Cabinet no objection goes. So it's not that we have done nothing. We have done everything to bring the Procurement Commission into being while securing our position of the maintenance of a no objection rule of Cabinet. But when that bill was put to the floor, they signaled, the opposition together signaled that they will defeat it. As a result, the government had to ask that the bill be adjourned sine die while we arrive at some compromise. So I hope that that is also reflected in the report.
Mr. President, Neil Marks, Capital News. Sir, could you say what in the lump sum demands of the opposition your government is willing to flex on, to compromise on? And I have a question for your Attorney General after.
I can't give you that because I don't know what the opposition is ready to concede to give us a bill that is CFATF compliant.
And for the Attorney General, Mr. President, through you, Mr. Attorney General, what makes you the authority in constitutional matters? Because it seems that much of the problems now with the non-assent of the bills, for sure, has to do with you and your advice to the President. Why can you not be wrong?
If I ever give you, Neil, or anyone for that matter, the impression that I'm infallible or I'm incapable of being wrong, I want to clear that up, all right? That's the first thing. Secondly, as principal legal advisor to the government of Guyana, it is my responsibility to advise the government on all matters of law, including the Constitution. I have repeatedly said that the court is the final arbiter on matters of law and on the constitutionality of matters. However, that does not prevent me from expressing my legal opinion on a legal matter which is part of my constitutional responsibility. I have gone further to say that anyone who disagrees with an opinion expressed by me is free to approach the court. I have indicated to the opposition that much, and also that they can even go to seek the opinion of another lawyer and publish that opinion. I have even asked them to sit with me on a television program and debate the particular matter at hand as it relates to the constitutionality of any of the bills that I have offered a professional opinion on. Not one of those challenges have ever been accepted.
But Neil Marks to talk about what the President should give. I want to ask a question to the media and to the public. Why should a government, on a matter of such national importance, where it's not just the government will be affected by blacklisting, have to trade with anybody to vote on something that is for the benefit of the whole country? This is not a bill. This is not a bill that was hatched in the Freedom House or in the office of the president or by President Ramotar.
Any minute, yeah.
This is a bill to satisfy international requirements. Just because we have an opposition with a one-seat majority in the parliament, you keep coming every day, changing the goalpost, asking for more and more. It's like taking out all of your teeth one at a time. Every day you pull out one, and after you've gone through the pain of that one, you come back for another one tomorrow. When will it stop? And I'm saying, on this particular matter, the opposition cannot escape the fact that they have put Guyana to ransom for narrow partition politics and personal interest in many instances. And this is what is dangerous to the kind of politics that we have in Guyana. The president has already said, you are asking for the unassented bills to be looked at, which you just heard from the Attorney General about the issue of constitutionality. There's a process for those bills to come back to the president. It has been in the parliament over 6 months. It is now lapsed. We are prepared to even work ways with the standing order to allow it. Let's have a committee that looks at what needs to be cleaned up to make it acceptable to the president. What more could the president do? For the sake of Guyana, should the president just decide, because the opposition is coming with a long list, which is not ending? Because every time you have a discussion, the list, something else is being joined to the list. When will it all end? This is time to be magnanimous.
I just want to make one other point, Neil, it is one thing if I sign a bill that is unconstitutional unknowingly. It's another thing if I sign a bill when I'm advised that it's unconstitutional. And I want to remind you, I know that many people don't like history, but we must learn from history. I want to remind you that in the 1990s, all the political parties in the National Assembly got together and agreed that we will have voters' ID card to vote. And there was not a single complaint about it. No charge. In fact, I think it was extremely good because you were able to tally votes cast with cards that were there. Yet, a case was taken to court, the Esther Pereira case, to say that the elections should be nullified because the voter ID card was unconstitutional. How do I know that if I sign one of these bills that I have been advised by my Attorney General that is unconstitutional, that another Esther Pereira will not raise their heads and impeach me?
Just a quick follow-up, sir. Okay. Then, Mr. Attorney General, on your point, why then not go with the convention, which is after bills are passed in the House, that it goes to the President for assent, and he sends it, and as in the case of Esther Pereira, the court decides whether it is unconstitutional.
Well, what is stopping the opposition? What is stopping the opposition from taking it to the court to say that we have been wrong in our interpretation that is not?
So there's no matter to challenge?
No, that they could challenge it, they could challenge my reason. They could challenge the reason that I give for withholding my assent, and they can take it to the court. Okay.
Going back to the Public Procurement Commission, the AFC has put in provisions that the government can act as a stakeholder, and they could have issues for any tenders that have been risen. So you're talking about the government will be held to accountability, but the government could then be a stakeholder and you can raise your own concerns, but ultimately any decision would be left to the PPC. So why would you not work to establish the PPC and then go along with what they're saying and having no objection?
That proposal was put to us this morning. For the first time, it has to be examined. My position is that the Public Procurement Commission was set up by law. It's in the Constitution. And all the powers that the Constitution has given the Public Procurement Commission should be respected. They must have all the laws of that they will get comes from an act, it comes from the Constitution, and it should be respected. What you're telling me there now has not even yet been examined. This is a proposal. Does it conflict with, is it giving the PSC, Public Procurement Commission, PPC, more powers than the Constitution has given it? I don't know as yet. I have those things that we have to examine it. This was sprung on us this morning. You seem to be well connected.
But sir, quite apart from that, Miss Tiwari, Balgobin. Yes, I know. I remember the Tiwari person. Quite apart from that, if we are to accept that today, their position is not that anymore. Their position is that we must accept APNU's proposed amendments and APNU's position in relation to the non-assented bills. That is their position now. So they have, that's the point I made at the opening. They have changed their position, expanded their position from that of the Procurement Commission to the entirety of APNU's proposals. And that's the point that I hope you highlight in your report.
What is the importance of this no objection to cabinet? Could you explain to the nation?
I thought I did just now. To say that this is an executive function. That if we are to be held responsible, we're asking for the minimum, minimum position to discharge that function properly, which is the no objection. As I've said, every other country in the region awards contract. We're not asking for that. We're not asking to give us back that. That was in the cabinet before. We're not asking to take back that authority and that power. All we're asking is to give us the minimum for the no objection, for us to function. And if we are to be held responsible, that is the minimum that we can have.
I respond to you, sir. Bill 22 of 2013 satisfies both government and the opposition. That bill, you say, is CFATF compliant. The opposition, or APNU specifically, wants this bill to which they agree and the amendments go to Parliament. Was there any serious discussion with the opposition in general to let that bill, as it stands, go to Parliament?
That also is a position that they've raised, but this matter was sent. Their amendments were sent to the CFATF. When the select committee decided that they wanted to bring the CFATF to be cross-examined by them, their amendment, the whole bill, the amendments were sent to the CFATF. And when Mr. Hernandez came here, he expressed the danger, he expressed that the jeopardy that those amendments could cause in this, as I mentioned at the opening. We can make what we already have compliant, non-compliant. So it's not that it was discussed. It was not only discussed, but it was sent to the CFATF for their opinion, and an opinion was given. And, you know, we can't behave as if an opinion was not given in this case.
But just to say, Adam, on February 10th, in the committee, I moved the motion, because remember we were trying to reach that February deadline. On February 10th, I moved the motion that since at February 9th, we had agreement on all 22 clauses of the, or all the clauses of Bill number 22 of 2013. Let's send that bill with a report to the House on February the 10th. Right? At midday on February the 10th, I moved that motion. And it was voted on. The opposition voted against, the government voted for. So it was not just about political discussions. It went to the committee and a vote was taken. The opposition used their majority in the committee to block Bill 22 of 2013 and its report from going to the House. As a matter of fact, today again, in our negotiations, I advocated the same position, that the bill as agreed upon, because of the looming deadline, let's send that bill and let the other amendments be the basis of further discussions which could come in the form of another bill, and they have the majority anyhow to pass it. But the issue here is not just about strengthening the bill and the act. The issue here is holding the government ransom because of a deadline. Because of a deadline, I will extract every ounce of flesh that I could get, because if there is no deadline, I have no such political might to exercise. And that is what is dangerous for Guyana. If it was merely about strengthening the bill, the President's recommendations of sending those amendments to CFATF to get a view could be allowed, because you have the majority in the Parliament. At any time, you could bring a bill and it could be passed. And that was highlighted again today in those discussions.
Mr. President, on any other given day, I noticed his driver outside. The Minister of Finance would have been here to explain his position. Are you embarrassed by his reports that he was driving
I'm
on
here
the
to speak about this.
alcohol?
I will advise you not to bring these matters. I'm here to speak about this bill. I don't want to divert from this issue. I will come back another time. You can ask me anything you like. I don't mind answering any question, even when they're stupid questions. I don't mind doing that. But at this time, I'm here to talk about this issue. This is a matter of grave national importance, and that is what I'm here to speak about today.
Mr. President, sir, you have proposed that the two sides meet to discuss the whole question of the bills that were not assented and possibly seeking the opinion of CFATF. But the opposition says that they have been burnt several times, in that they have reached agreements with the government over the years, but these agreements have not been held by the government side. So what then can you tell them, what assurance can you give them that you will hold a bargain this time?
I don't agree with that. In fact, I will tell you this, that I've said at other places before, that there aren't very much that you can point to the government having agreement on and that we have not lived up to. The opposition claim they have resurrected the Jagdeo-Corbyn's agreement, no? That they have. But when Jagdeo made that commitment, he made that commitment with a public procurement commission that will have the no objections. When Cabinet sent that bill to the National Assembly, they sent it with the no objections inside. These are circumstances that have changed. We stick to whenever we give our word, we stick to it. Even when Mrs. Janet Jagan signed the Hurd-Manson Accord, in which we gave up 2 years of our term of government, even though we had an audited election in which they said they found not a single fraudulent ballot, we kept our word. I can't say the same for the opposition, because my first, I wouldn't have to go back far, I only talk about my experience. My first negotiation with them was on the 2012 budget. We talk about the concessions that we gave on their recommendation. We increased the pension. We agreed and we increased. The next day, they agreed with us that we should reduce the subsidy to Linden electricity, largely because I think they recognized the waste and so forth that was taking place, that average Linden consumer consumed more than 3 times as much as an average Georgetown consumer, because the electricity is cheap. And apart from that, it was becoming a burden in the budget. Right now, it's about $3 billion in the budget. We agreed on that. Lo and behold, before the end of the day, we were told that there was no agreement. So if you want, we can list all I mean, I don't know if that is the most important thing now. Now we're facing a crunch, right? And I don't want us to go back to drag up all of them because I have a bucket full of issues that I could bring. But this is not the purpose of today. Today, we are talking about the welfare of our people, about the welfare of yourselves, and about the welfare of your family that are involved here. This is what we're talking about today. So don't let us drag out all of these past things. Is there not an ounce of patriotism to be used to pass this bill? Why do we have to have all of this conditionality to pass something that is of such importance that places every single citizen in this country at some that will be affected negatively?
Because I'm patriotic, I'm going to be optimistic that the bill will be passed, right? Yeah. So how prepared are we?
You don't need patriotism for that.
So how prepared are we for enforcing the provisions under the Act when this bill is passed, when the AML is passed?
Already we are setting up mechanisms. We have, and we're working also in compliance with the mechanism that have been set up. I understand that there have even been some inspections here by some other organization that went to see what we have been establishing, and they have expressed big satisfaction about the way we're going. But we are ready to set up. This is what is now what is on the table now. We are ready to set up, and we are willing to set up all the mechanism that needs to be enforced to enforce all of these laws. As I have said, what we have is similar to the rest of the region, and if you look, that's where I asked you just now to look, that you have to make comparisons. When we're going to make statements about how effective or ineffective we are, we can only judge that by making comparisons. And that is why I asked you just now to make comparisons with the rest of the region and to see how much more they have done than we have.
Mr. President, I find it a little vague. So if you could please expound a little for me. What are these mechanisms you're talking about?
Yeah.
All right. As I explained on a number of occasions, the recommendations which have come from CFATF came in two components, a legislative component and a non-legislative component. We are at fault in not implementing the non-legislative requirements. That's the bill. In terms of the legislative requirements, where we are at default, sorry. In terms of the non-legislative requirements, we are moving swiftly ahead because it does not include an input from Parliament. We have already established what are called guidelines for the supervisory authorities. You have to be acquainted with the statute to understand. So that there's a whole mechanism in place in the commercial architecture of the country that puts all the organizations that have to work in collaboration with each other in the infrastructure created by the Act. We have connected them in a working relationship with guidelines and certain other regulations. We have established a national task force comprising of the Ministry of Legal Affairs, the Ministry of Home Affairs, the Ministry of Finance, the Guyana Revenue Authority, the Governor of the Central Bank, the Insurance, the Governor of the Commission of Insurance, the Commission of Police, the Guyana Defense Force, CANU, the Director of Public Prosecutions. Those are the organizations that I can name immediately. That organization, that task force, has already been established. Yes, there's a representative as well from the private sector. Then we are working to establish a specialized, organized crime unit, it abbreviated SUKU. You would have seen in the newspapers that advertisements have already been placed and the recruitment of staff to that unit has already commenced. So work has already begun to put all the recommendations in place. That is why when you look at the public statement issued by the Caribbean Financial Task Force in November, They say that Guyana has made progress. However, there are certain strategic deficiencies still to be addressed in the architecture. They largely lie in Guyana's inability to pass an amendment to the Money Laundering Act, which is pending in the National Assembly. I am almost reciting the language of that public statement verbatim. So to answer your question again, in a nutshell, we have done everything that we are required to do at this stage, other than pass the bill. And that, I believe, is a demonstration of the commitment of Guyana, government of Guyana, the executive arm of the state, to move the process forward in terms of making our country ready to combat money laundering and the financing of terrorism.
Sir, quickly. The bill isn't up for debate in the National Assembly tomorrow because the order paper indicates not to be proceeded with. Is there any way that, given that, you could actually move the bill from where it is to Parliament for discussion tomorrow? Bearing, and you know, the whole question of time and all of this.
Government by itself and without the support of the opposition cannot get the bill out of the National Assembly.
Out of committee.
Out of the Select Committee, sorry, to the National Assembly. We need votes to do so. So that is a quick answer to your question. If the opposition, I suppose, they do not turn up, well, then I suppose we can move the bill out.
As we attempted to do.
As we did on a previous occasion. So that's where we are. I don't know whether the bill will be taken out of the Assembly, out of the Select Committee, rather.
Tomorrow.
No, we don't. We can't give you a yes or no answer because
Today,
it's
the Select Committee is meeting
today.
just now.
Yeah. So that's why we will probably have to wrap up this thing. Is there anybody who have a question?
Yes, AG, through you, Mr. President. Sir, could you please elaborate a bit more on what the parliamentary councils have to do and how long it can take?
The Parliamentary Council, the two of them have done their job. They have prepared a bill. That bill is in the National Assembly. That bill has been assessed by CFATF to be compliant. So they have done the job assigned to them.
In relation to the opposition amendments?
The opposition amendments, they have worked on that part that they found palatable and acceptable in accordance with the guiding principles, and that has been submitted to the Select Committee already. The parts that are problematic, the parts that they have expressed apprehensions about, are the part that is still with them. They have not completed that task, and they cannot complete the task, and that's why they are experts.
All right, ladies and gentlemen of the press, I want to thank you for being here this afternoon. I'm sure that you are aware of the gravamen of the situation that we face, the very serious situation that we face. I have outlined to you what we think is the safest and fastest way to get us out of this predicament. That is by us sending a bill to the National Assembly that we know is compliant with CFATF's recommendation, and that we have given them our commitment, and I have put it in writing of how we intend, and a public, this now is a public commitment of how we intend to deal with their concerns, even though, as I said, that this matter is so crucial that it really alarms me that we can link anything to it when we know of the suffering that it can bring to our people. But thank you very much, and thanks once again for being here today.